O'Neill as Grandad Brown. Dermot O'Neill was born in Ireland in 1962. In 2011, at the age of 47, that he truly stepped into the public eye as Grandad Brown in the outrageous sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys. With his slow, slouched shuffle and perpetually annoyed stare, he became a cornerstone of the show's slapstick chaos. Audiences adored his timing, his silence, and the way he could steal a scene with a single grunt. But behind the laughter was a man carrying a private, tragic weight. In 2016, at the height of the show's popularity, Dermot was quietly diagnosed with a rare degenerative nerve condition, progressive supranuclear palsy. It began with forgetfulness, then tremors. Lines became harder to memorize, limbs harder to control. But he refused to let it show. He continued filming through the pain, through the fear that one day he wouldn't be able to move at all. Makeup artists were told he had arthritis, but no one knew the full truth. His wife, Fiona, left him in 2018 after 22 years of marriage, unable to cope with the man he was becoming. That broke him more than the disease ever could. He spiraled into depression, refusing interviews, disappearing from public life. Only Brendan O'Carroll, creator of Mrs. Brown's Boys, kept in touch, calling once a month to remind him he was still family. In 2020, Dermot filmed what would be his final Christmas special. Crew members helped him stand between takes. He could no longer hold his script without shaking. His final scene, silent, seated, and staring blankly, was left in the episode, unedited. Fans called it haunting. No one realized they were watching a man say goodbye. Dermot O'Neill died in March 2022. Alone in a care facility in County Wicklow. He was 60. No public announcement was made for days. No cameras, no headlines, just a quiet burial among the hills he once walked as a boy. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was $1 million, modest for a man who gave so much of himself to laughter. John Kenny as Cunningham. John Kenny was born in Hospital, County Limerick, Ireland, on 28 September 1957. In 2011, at age 54, he quietly stepped into the bizarre, boisterous world of Mrs. Brown's Boys. He played Cunningham, a grumbling, often exasperated neighbor who popped in and out of the Brown family's domestic chaos like a man both drawn to and repelled by their lunacy. He wasn't in every episode, but when he appeared, he brought a kind of gravelly realism that made even the most absurd scenes feel grounded. But there was a deeper story that most fans never knew. In 2000, at the height of Dunbelievables' touring success, John was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He kept the news private for months. When the group suddenly stopped performing, fans were left confused. But John was fighting for his life. Chemotherapy, isolation, a stem cell transplant. He beat it, at least for a while. He returned to comedy a changed man. In 2010, he began touring solo again with a new show, more introspective than before. He wasn't just doing characters, he was bearing his soul. His 2007 stand-up DVD, Back to Front, revealed a man wrestling with aging, illness, and legacy. Yet he never stopped making people laugh. Then came the heart issues. In 2011, he underwent triple bypass surgery. He joked about it on stage, but those close to him knew he was in constant pain. In 2020, his cancer returned, this time in the lungs. He kept performing, kept writing, kept showing up, until he couldn't anymore. In November 2024, John suffered a heart attack and fell into a coma. He never woke up. He died on November 15th at Galway Clinic, surrounded by his family. He was 67. The news sent a ripple of shock through the comedy world. He had fought so long, so hard. He was buried quietly at Loch Gur Cemetery after a funeral in Patrickswell. No fanfare, no tabloid headlines, just a farewell whispered among the hills of Limerick. Brendan O'Carroll as Agnes Brown. Brendan O'Carroll was born on September 17, 1955, in Finglas, Dublin. At 56, he would explode onto TV screens as the foul-mouthed, nightgown-wearing matriarch Agnes Brown in Mrs. Brown's Boys, a character he created, wrote, and embodied with such chaotic perfection that audiences either adored or despised him. Few knew the pain behind the punchlines. Before the world laughed with him, Brendan had faced soul-crushing failure. In the late 90s, he poured everything into a film project, Sparrow's Trap, a boxing movie that was supposed to change his life. But halfway through production, funding vanished. Overnight, he lost over $1 million. He went bankrupt. He sold his house. The dream collapsed. For weeks, he locked himself in a rented flat, surviving on instant noodles and antidepressants. The unraveling didn't stop there. In 1999, just as his finances crumbled, his 22-year marriage to Doreen O'Carroll fell apart. He lost his home, his family, his confidence. Friends described him as ghost-like, a man walking through his own wreckage. Only one thing kept him going, a cross-dressing character he created for a radio skit, Mrs. Agnes Brown. What started as a joke soon became salvation. He gathered his remaining savings and launched a stage version. No investors, no guarantees, just raw belief. Slowly, audiences grew. By 2011, at age 56, Brendan finally brought Mrs. Brown's Boys to television, writing every line, casting his real-life wife, sister, son, and daughter. The show became a cultural sensation, spawning 51 episodes, sold-out tours, and a feature film. Beneath the outrageous humor was a broken man who rebuilt himself from ashes, dressing in drag to hide the scars. As of 2025, Brendan O'Carroll is 69 years old, living in Davenport, Florida, still touring, still writing, still playing the irreverent Agnes Brown. His estimated net worth? $15 million, Eilish O'Carroll as Winnie McGugan. Eilish O'Carroll was born on November 5, 1952, in Dublin, Ireland. At the age of 59, she took on the role of Winnie McGugan in the BBC sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys, appearing in over 40 episodes as the eccentric but loyal best friend of Agnes Brown. Eilish became a familiar figure across UK and Irish television, often drawing laughs with little more than a confused stare or mistimed entrance. But in June 2025, her brother Brendan O'Carroll publicly revealed that Eilish was undergoing treatment for a serious illness. The first symptoms began during a live stage tour in late 2024. She forgot lines, something entirely unlike her. Stagehands noticed she needed help standing between scenes. In private, she complained of blurred vision, dizziness, and persistent nausea. Assuming it was exhaustion, she continued performing until she collapsed backstage in Belfast after a matinee show. Rushed to hospital, Eilish was told there were lesions on her brain. Doctors suspected either an aggressive form of neurological disease or a tumor. The following weeks were filled with tests, invasive scans, and medical silence. The diagnosis, though never publicly disclosed, led to immediate rounds of chemotherapy and cognitive rehabilitation. Her partner, Marion O'Sullivan, became her full-time caregiver. Eilish withdrew from public life completely, declining interviews, canceling the remaining stage dates, and refusing any media coverage. Her absence from Mrs. Brown's Boys' Christmas special, the first since its debut, was noted but unexplained. As of 2025, Eilish O'Carroll is 72 years old and remains in private care at her home in Cork, surrounded by family. Her exact condition is undisclosed, but her brother stated she is going through the hard bit and doing extremely well. Her estimated net worth stands at $2 million, earned from her long-standing role as Winnie McGugan and years of theater work. She has not confirmed any future return to television. Jennifer Gibney as Kathy Brown. Jennifer Gibney was born on July 7, 1964, in Dublin, Ireland. At 47, she began portraying Kathy Brown in the BBC sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys, playing the dutiful daughter of Agnes Brown, a role performed by her real-life husband Brendan O'Carroll. She became a central figure in the show's domestic chaos. But behind the rehearsed humor and tight-knit family cast, Gibney endured a private ordeal that would never make it into a script. In 2014, during a break from filming, she accepted an invitation to appear on Strictly Come Dancing. Though publicly framed as a career highlight, it became a point of deep personal unraveling. Under the glaring lights and live judgment, Jennifer's long-standing insecurities about her talent, often buried beneath years of ensemble acting, were exposed. She struggled with choreography, forgot steps during rehearsal, and faced condescending media headlines labeling her wooden and unmemorable. Within 2 weeks, she was voted off. Backstage footage, never aired, captured her in tears, alone in a corner of the dressing room, whispering that she never should have done it. She returned home to silence, skipping public interviews and declining offers for talk shows that had once courted her. For months afterward, Jennifer withdrew from social gatherings and production meetings. Cast members noticed her absences. Even Brendan, known for shielding his family, admitted in private that he didn't know how to help her. She later confided that Strictly had reopened old wounds, memories of being the overlooked middle child, of standing outside drama school doors as a bank clerk in her 30s, wondering if it was too late to chase a different life. In an industry that often rewards flash and spectacle, her quiet professionalism had always made her invisible. This time, she felt humiliated on a national scale. As of 2025, Jennifer Gibney is 60 and remains part of the Mrs. Brown's Boys franchise, though she avoids on-camera interviews and press tours. Her estimated net worth is $5 million, earned over years of steady but unspectacular work. She lives between Dublin and Florida, maintaining a strict division between her personal life and public persona. Though the show continues, her role has quietly diminished, a reflection not of age, but of a scar left by one moment that took only minutes to unfold, and years to recover from. Fiona O'Carroll as Maria Brown. Fiona O'Carroll was born in Dublin in 1980, the daughter of Brendan O'Carroll and Doreen O'Carroll. At 31 years old, she began portraying Maria Brown in Mrs. Brown's Boys, playing the patient, soft-spoken wife of Dermot Brown in the hit BBC RTA sitcom. But behind the scenes, she was living a reality far more grueling than any script. In 2021, after 15 years of marriage to her Mrs. Brown's Boys co-star, Martin Delaney, Fiona announced their separation. What the public didn't see was the years leading up to that moment consumed by the demands of raising 4 sons, 3 of whom are on the autism spectrum. While juggling filming schedules, stage tours, and a growing career in Irish theater, Fiona became the silent backbone of a family in crisis. Her husband relocated to Portugal post-divorce, leaving her to manage the full weight of parenting, therapy appointments, school transitions, and emotional breakdowns alone. She began to withdraw from social life and declined several television offers in 2022, citing personal priorities. In private, she described moments of lying on the kitchen floor at night, too emotionally drained to stand, too afraid to sleep. The same year she joined Special Forces' Ultimate Hell Week, a televised endurance challenge that pushed her body to collapse and left her with torn ligaments and temporary hearing loss. She called it life-changing, but off-screen it was a cry for control, a test of strength after a decade of private helplessness. It was her way of reclaiming identity after being defined by others, by her father's shadow, her marriage, her children's diagnoses. As of 2025, Fiona O'Carroll is 44 years old, still working in theater and short films while raising her sons in Ireland. Her estimated net worth is $2 million, built from television, stage, and her growing voice in Irish indie cinema. Though no longer married, she remains close to her family and continues to appear in select Mrs. Brown's Boys specials. Danny O'Carroll as Buster Brady. Danny O'Carroll was born on October 16, 1983 in Dublin, Ireland. At 27, he became widely recognized as Buster Brady, the dim-witted but lovable family friend in the BBC RTA sitcom Mrs. Brown's Boys. Appearing in around 20 episodes and taking on an executive producer role for Mrs. Brown's Boys movie, 2014, Danny cemented his place in the heart of the franchise built by his father, Brendan O'Carroll. But in 2024, just months before turning 41, Danny's personal life unraveled in a way that forced him off the stage and into a silence that spoke louder than any scripted punchline. For years, Danny and Amanda Woods, who played Betty Brown on the show, were seen as the stable couple of the Mrs. Brown's Boys universe. Married in 2007 with 2 sons, they lived in Donegal and maintained a seemingly peaceful life. But those close to the family revealed a long brewing distance, strained by the pressures of filming, parenthood, and Danny's growing involvement in behind-the-scenes production. In private, Amanda reportedly struggled with feeling overlooked, while Danny, often away on promotional tours or deep in work, missed key milestones in their children's lives. Therapy was tried. Breaks were taken. By mid-2023, Amanda moved out. On January 2, 2024, Danny publicly confirmed their separation. In the months that followed, Danny withdrew from the public eye. His usual charity work and community appearances ceased. Rumors swirled that he had suffered a quiet breakdown, citing exhaustion and unresolved grief over the collapse of his marriage. Friends noted he had begun sleeping at his father's guest house in Dublin, away from his home in Donegal. In a last-minute decision, he accepted a spot on Dancing with the Stars Ireland, which premiered in December 2024. It was seen not as a career move, but as a personal escape, a structured distraction from the mess of real life. He was eliminated early but remained gracious, thanking fans for getting him through a hard year. As of 2025, Danny O'Carroll is 41 years old. He is co-parenting his 2 sons with Amanda Woods and gradually returning to the Mrs. Brown's Boys set for live specials. His net worth is estimated at $1.5 million. While his future in the spotlight remains uncertain, the dissolution of a 17-year marriage marked a turning point in his story. Amanda Woods as Betty Brown. Amanda Woods was born in 1979 and joined the cast of Mrs. Brown's Boys at the age of 32, portraying Betty Brown, the no-nonsense wife of Mark and daughter-in-law to the irrepressible Agnes Brown. Amanda brought subtle strength and understated humor to a show built on chaos. But off-screen, her quiet presence masked a private life that began to fracture under pressures invisible to the audience. Amanda met Danny O'Carroll, who played Buster Brady and was also Brendan O'Carroll's son, when they were both in their early 20s. She gave birth to their first son, Jamie, in 2006 at the age of 22, followed by Blake not long after. The two married in 2007 and became one of the show's real-life couples, working and raising a family within the same production. But years of blurred boundaries between home and work, the weight of public expectation, and constant touring took their toll. By 2023, the strain was no longer manageable. They announced their separation quietly in early 2024 after 17 years of marriage. No scandal, no press statements, just distance that had become permanent. Amanda had grown increasingly withdrawn from the spotlight, declining live tours, opting instead to focus on raising their sons away from the production bubble. Friends say she felt overshadowed, not only by the O'Carroll name but by the enormity of a family empire built on comedy, even as her own family life became less and less laughable. She reportedly battled silent anxiety through the final years of her marriage, putting on a public smile while privately managing school runs, filming gaps, and emotional disconnect. As of 2025, Amanda Woods is 45 years old and lives in Ireland with her 2 sons. Though she no longer appears regularly on Mrs. Brown's Boys, she has not ruled out returning to television. Her net worth is estimated at $1.2 million, earned through her long-running role and stage performances. While she maintains a private life, her separation from Danny marked a turning point, one that removed her from the center of the family brand, but allowed her to rediscover herself outside of Betty Brown and beyond the name O'Carroll. Susie Blake as Hilary Nicholson. Susie Blake was born on April 19, 1950 in Highgate, London, into a celebrated British acting family. At 61, she joined Mrs. Brown's Boys as the impeccably dressed and cuttingly polite Hilary Nicholson, appearing in around a dozen episodes. She had already built a decades-long career in theater and television, from Victoria Wood, as seen on TV, to Coronation Street. But in 2015, just as she returned briefly to the Coronation Street set, she was handed a script that required her to walk into the most painful performance of her life. The scene was set in Deirdre Barlow's garden. The character's death had been written in after Anne Kirkbride, who played Deirdre for over 40 years, died suddenly in January 2015. Susie had worked closely with Anne during her time on the soap and considered her not just a colleague, but a quiet confidant. When Anne died from cancer, the news was withheld from the public for weeks. Susie learned of it through a private call from production and, for a time, said nothing. She had no words. Returning to the studio felt like walking into a wake. The wardrobe team offered her the usual costume, Bev's cardigan and scarf, but Susie brought her own, a silk accessory Anne had gifted her after a long week of filming. On the day of the shoot, cast and crew paused between takes for real tears, and Susie, reading lines about the death of Deirdre, was barely able to keep her voice steady. She later admitted in private that she experienced recurring nightmares after the episode aired, seeing Anne's silhouette standing backstage, waiting for her cue. As of 2025, Susie Blake is 74 years old, still performing in theater, most recently in the touring production Murder in the Dark. Her net worth is estimated at $2 million, accumulated over a long and steady career. Though she continues to accept roles, she rarely speaks publicly about the Coronation Street return. Colleagues note she keeps a drawer locked in her dressing room at every venue, a small space that contains one item, the folded silk scarf from Anne Kirkbride. Rory Cowan as Rory Brown. Rory Cowan was born on October 15, 1959 in Dublin, Ireland. He was 52 years old when he began starring as Rory Brown in Mrs. Brown's Boys, 2011, a flamboyant, lovable character known for comic relief and heartfelt moments. His chemistry with Brendan O'Carroll's Agnes Brown brought laughter to millions. But behind his bright smile, Rory Cowan was quietly breaking. In reality, Rory was living a nightmare. For over a decade, he was the primary caregiver to his ailing mother, Esther, who suffered from dementia. As the world laughed at his on-screen antics, Rory would rush home after shows to care for a woman who no longer recognized him. The emotional toll was immense. He watched the strongest woman he knew vanish piece by piece. During the final months of her life, Rory was performing in packed stadiums across the UK and crying alone in hospital corridors every night. In 2017, without warning, he walked away from the show. He didn't even tell Brendan O'Carroll beforehand. The decision shocked fans and the cast alike, but for Rory, the facade had collapsed. "I was no longer able to pretend everything was okay," he admitted later. His mother passed away in November 2018. He said her final years had shattered him in ways he still couldn't articulate. The loneliness, the grief, the guilt, he carried them all off stage, in silence. Money never filled the hole. Though his net worth was estimated around $1.5 million, it meant nothing in the face of watching his mother forget his name. As of 2025, Rory Cowan is 65 years old and still living in Dublin. He joined the cast of Fair City in 2019, playing John Bosco Walsh, and occasionally appears in Irish media. He never married and has been openly gay since the start of his career. Despite everything, he remains a quiet advocate for dementia awareness, speaking not as a celebrity, but as a son who once fed his dying mother before stepping into a spotlight he no longer wanted. Saoirse Cusack as Hilary Nicholson. Saoirse Cusack was born on April 9, 1949, in Dublin, Ireland. At 62, she took on the role of Hilary Nicholson in the first season of Mrs. Brown's Boys, appearing in a handful of episodes before being replaced due to scheduling conflicts. But in 2022, at the age of 73, Cusack made an abrupt and final exit from the BBC's long-running drama, Father Brown, in which she had starred for 9 seasons as the devout and sharp-tongued Mrs. McCarthy. No farewell episode, no official statement. She disappeared from the cast without ceremony. The silence surrounding her departure sparked rumors within the industry. Some cited creative disagreements with producers. Others whispered about a private health crisis. In truth, Saoirse had suffered a major breakdown on set in early 2022, brought on, according to close sources, by accumulated stress and the sudden death of a lifelong friend in Dublin weeks earlier. During the filming of episode 4 in the final season, she reportedly froze mid-scene, unable to recall her lines, her hands trembling. Production was halted. A medic was called. She never returned to the set after that day. Friends later disclosed that Saoirse had requested her name be removed from marketing materials for the remaining episodes. She retreated from the spotlight entirely, turning down offers from Coronation Street and A Discovery of Witches, both of which had planned special appearances. Her husband, actor Nigel Cook, became her full-time companion during recovery. The couple relocated temporarily to the Wicklow countryside, away from press and performance. As of 2025, Saoirse Cusack is 75 years old, officially retired from screen work. Her estimated net worth stands at $1 million, accumulated through theater, radio, and a distinguished television career. While she has not made any public appearances since late 2023, she remains quietly respected in the acting world. Gary Hollywood as Dino Doyle. Gary Hollywood, born September 2, 1979 in Glasgow, Scotland, was just 32 when he stepped into the vibrant world of Mrs. Brown's Boys as Dino Doyle, a flamboyant, beloved character who lit up the screen with charm and sass. But behind the sequins and laughter, Gary was spiraling toward the darkest chapter of his life. In 2023, Gary and his second wife, Cheryl Ann, announced they were expecting a child, a ray of light after years of professional betrayal and personal collapse. But at 12 weeks, their joy was shattered by a sudden miscarriage. Gary, who had already endured a painful public split from the Mrs. Brown's Boys cast in 2020 over alleged pay discrimination, now found himself battling a grief that had no script, no punchline, no applause. The baby was gone. And so was the version of himself that still believed in happy endings. He described the loss as suffocating, revealing in rare interviews how he collapsed in the hallway of their home upon hearing the news, how the silence afterward felt louder than anything he'd ever experienced on stage. Friends say he barely spoke for weeks. The man who once made millions laugh was now a ghost inside his own life, watching the nursery plans gather dust. That same year, his net worth, estimated at around $700,000, was no comfort. Fame had given him recognition, but not immunity from tragedy. As of 2025, Gary Hollywood is 45 and lives quietly in Scotland, devoting his time to his 2 sons and occasional theater work. He no longer seeks the spotlight. The miscarriage wasn't just a personal loss. It was the final unraveling of a life once defined by laughter. And in that unraveling, he found a quieter, sobering truth. Sometimes, the most heartbreaking roles are the ones you never auditioned for.